Hello, Olgera. Welcome to the Pacific Way. Now, every 2 years, representatives from various governments and organizations across the globe gather for the International Congress on AIDS in Asia and the Pacific, or ICAP. This Congress provides an important forum to discuss challenges, share ideas, knowledge, and research related to the HIV and AIDS epidemic. Tonight, we revisit the last ICAP, hosted in 2009 in the beautiful tourist city of Bali, Indonesia, where a small Pacific delegation presented a strong, united voice on the work being carried out to fight the spread of this deadly virus in the region.
When we talk about human rights, we are talking about people. We are talking about the individuals, you and I and everyone else outside, who are making our society, who are making our families. We're not talking about commodities, we're not talking about economic development and looking at, within economic development, looking at people as simply commodities. But we're looking at them as assets. We are looking at ourselves as assets of this economic development, and therefore, to be able to keep these assets, we need to invest in it and we need to nurture them.
Always remember that we are dealing not just with a virus, but with human beings, our family, our friends, our neighbor, our co-workers. While we strive to kill the virus, we must care to protect the human dignity. By saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I declare the 9th International Congress on AIDS in Asia and the Pacific open.
Day by day, I'll always be beside you throughout this path, and nothing shall be thus when we try. Together, let us dream a better life.
Every 2 years, representatives of governments, UN agencies, NGOs, health organizations, health workers, and people living with HIV and AIDS in Asia and the Pacific come together to discuss and debate the current status of the HIV and AIDS epidemic in the region. In 2009, the 9th International Congress on AIDS in Asia and the Pacific, ICAP, was held in Bali, Indonesia.
Day by day, I'll be there for you to share the fare. Never put it down on what we can.
A small exotic haven, Bali is a popular tourist destination steeped in rich cultural heritage and is highly regarded for its various art forms. The theme for the 9th ICAP was empowering people, strengthening networks.
According to our dictionary,
ICAP provided a unique opportunity for organizations to exhibit their work and the various activities they carry out in support of their work against HIV and AIDS.
youth is power! Youth is power! Youth is power!
The Congress was opened by the President of Indonesia, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. In his opening speech, the President emphasized the importance of leadership, for without it, the fight against HIV and AIDS will not be as effective.
The best way to strike a blow against AIDS is way of effective and sustained intersectoral policies that aims to prevent, contain, and reverse the spread of AIDS. And these policies do not come by itself. They only come by way of leaderships. Without leaderships, the fight against AIDS becomes sporadic, reactive, without focus, lacking resources, and will eventually lose steam.
To date, an estimated 25 million people have died from AIDS. And while a lot more is now known about this lethal virus since its first detection in the early 1980s, a more aggressive effort to fight its spread is being made across all fronts, including through investment and research dedicated to finding a solution to end the HIV and AIDS epidemic.
Some 75,000 people are said to contract HIV each day. In some countries and communities, HIV has raised the specter of a lost generation, a generation where the youth are doomed before reaching or completing their reproductive age. And in the short and the medium terms, HIV death rate will continue to climb because we still have not found a vaccine or a cure for AIDS. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon rightly points out that AIDS is one of the most devastating epidemics in history. Like any other major effort, the struggle against AIDS will require a constant process of trial and error and a constant search for new innovations.
The Secretariat of the Pacific Community, SPC, constructed a booth which served as the Pacific Meeting House, a base for the vibrant Pacific delegation representing various Pacific Island countries and territories. Whilst the Pacific delegation was small in number, they did, however, put together a collective voice on the situation of HIV and AIDS in the region.
We cannot afford in the Pacific to be complacent because this is what happened in South Africa, and within 10 years, a tenfold increase in the number of cases, because it's a multiplier impact when it starts going out of control, and we got to make sure that that doesn't happen. What I think is the good lesson for us in the Pacific is that complacency now will translate into disaster later.
We need to make sure that we maintain what we have achieved so far, particularly in terms of prevention, as well as our capacity in the health services, whether it's in terms of testing or providing treatment. We also need to start looking at our legislations a lot more seriously than what we have done in the past. And now that we have the knowledge, to actually put that knowledge into practice and make sure that our legislations, laws and policies actually enabling all of what we have started to do without really have the laws to back it up.
Most importantly, we need to work together. Again, leadership needs to work together. What's important? This is the most important thing, first and foremost. Collectively, we can do it. Once we set our mind into it, have a bit of compassion, have a bit of commitment, we are able to change the way HIV and AIDS is in the Pacific.
Hi, how are you?
Peter Momo knows all too well about the need for commitment and compassion from all sectors of society when combating HIV and AIDS. He serves as an ambassador of hope for Papua New Guinea's Sports Federation. About 10 years ago, Momo discovered that he was living with the HIV virus. He now uses his life story to deliver a powerful message of both caution and hope at many forums such as this.
I want to inspire young people to see the bad side of it, and also that my little story, my disobedient way of living, might make them become a better person and a better sportsman in the Pacific. And I speak with a lot of confidence and with power because I know what it brings them, because they see me. Because I also share with them the heartbreaks I've gone through, the discrimination I faced, all attached to HIV. How I was pushed away from the sports place. I couldn't go and watch sports. So shameful. They saw me as a secretary of the PNG Sports Volleyball Federation. At one stage I was getting the microphone, hello, this game, that game. It so happened that Peter Momo's face went missing. It was a very hard decision to do. But I'm thankful that the strength as ambassador has given me a lot of joy. And I know doing this, the inner satisfaction I have is when a lot of sports people respond to me and say, bro, thank you.
I'm glad to see today that there are positive networks that weren't there before, but behind those networks, there are people who are living with HIV who are no longer scared to say, I'm a Pacific Islander, I'm Fijian, I'm Solomon Islands, I'm Vanuatu, and I'm HIV positive. And this is my story. That is a huge step.
The ICAP highlighted the many success stories and efforts being carried out in the fight against HIV and AIDS, but it also brought to the fore the disparity in the level of success of these efforts when comparing Asia with the Pacific region.
I was in the conference and people were presenting their 25th year, 20th year, whereas in the Pacific, the most we can say is 5 years or 8 years per program that's run continuously. A lot of programs have mushroomed up and have already died, so based on the funding streams. An overview of monitoring, evaluation, and reporting.
In order to bridge this gap, programs implemented to fight and prevent the spread of HIV and AIDS in the region need to be sustainable. For this to happen, Pacific Island leadership needs to play a central role.
As we know, NGOs are doing work. They're only filling a gap for government. My view of sustainability is when a successful intervention in country is absorbed by government and is replicated and resourced. Then we know it's ongoing because government will always be around regardless of us saying it's not vamping up its response, or it needs to replicate successful programs in its country and replicate it on a bigger scale. So if there's a successful peer education program, they should take it over and replicate it on a broader scale and resource it so that it can be ongoing, rather than like now, programs rely on funding windows. So they might go for 2 years, then they stop for 1 year, then they get another funding and go for another 3 years. Whereas if government systematically funded them and absorbed them, they would go on for a longer period. And behavior change can be really measured properly on a longer term scale.
We have to start looking at ensuring that the programs are well integrated or linked within the broader health service delivery system in each country. That would address sustainability and of course increase the coverage for various programs. Like if it's testing is for HIV is one of the critical area we need to do. We have to start linking that with other broader health services. So I think two key messages is that one, we have to look at long-term sustainability of the program, and secondly, we have to look at the high prevalence of sexually transmitted infections as the main one in the Pacific that we need to address.
The Congress brought together over 4,000 people from 65 countries to discuss the status of HIV and AIDS in the Asia-Pacific region. And perhaps just as important to note is how the ICAP banded together individuals and organizations representing different walks of life for a common cause. Various experts, activists and artists all contributing to the pool of ideas on how to combat HIV and AIDS. This photography exhibit was of the Global Fund's Access to Life project, The aim was to provide a creative display of how funding for access to free treatment around the world is working to change people's lives.
We wanted to show that whereas in the past it would have been a death sentence to be diagnosed with HIV and to then progress toward AIDS, in these cases having access to treatment can mean a fairly normal life, in fact, and that once treatment is begun, when people respond well, they can be dramatically improved, their state of health can improve dramatically in a very short period of time. By showing our donors the value of the contributions that they're making, that we could build on and reinforce providing funding for treatment for AIDS. And for example, this exhibit was premiered in a museum format in Washington, D.C., and that happened right around the time of the congressional appropriations process, when Congress was considering how much funding to allocate for the Global Fund and for their own AIDS initiatives. But this exhibit provided members of Congress who took an interest with evidence that the funding is working.
As the conference came to an end, it gave participants an opportunity to reflect on the successes achieved so far, the lessons learned, and the challenges that lay ahead.
It has been good to meet different people that have been working in the areas of HIV and AIDS. At the same time, to see a lot of people who have been the main vocal of advocates in the region and hear personally from them. It gives us some idea of what we can do in terms of our work in the Pacific. At the same time, what we have been doing in the Pacific, which they can learn from.
In this conference alone, I've met a lot of very interesting people from around the Pacific, from the countries that are being represented, HIV positive people, transgender, bisexuals, and sex men. So, it's just, I see them and my heart cries out to them. And I wish a lot of people can actually, more political leadership can come to these conferences here. I know there are some here. But you can be a leader, but you have to be open in your heart. You have to be totally free to accept what you see, And again, you have to be totally free to be addressing these particular issues that nobody wants to address.
I think ICAP, we have not yet gone to a level where we are organizing ourselves well enough ahead of time so that our presence at the meeting is really, really strong. I think this is probably the strongest we've had so far, and we're in the 9th ICAP. We've done a lot of work in the Pacific, in the smaller Pacific Island countries. Now they're pretty sorted. I think they can manage the situation. It's time for some of us to put a lot more emphasis on PNG, and considering that they're the one facing a generalized epidemic, and hopefully see in 2011, which is the next ICAP, a much stronger, much vocal PNG delegation.
Day by day.
There were a lot of messages and lessons that participants took away from the Congress. Dubbed a huge success, the 9th ICAP managed to accomplish what it set out to do, informing and empowering groups and individuals in order to strengthen the overall effort to combat HIV and AIDS in the region. For the Pacific delegation, there is every hope that leaders and various stakeholders will band together for a broader and stronger representation at the next International Congress on AIDS in Asia and the Pacific, the 10th ICAP, which will be held in Busan, South Korea.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for tonight. If you want to learn more about the Pacific Way, you can visit our website on www.sbc.int/RMC or find us on Facebook. Drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, ituo aroha nui ni sa moane.